Hello and welcome to this video about the third aspect of empathy, which comes from my book, The Art of Empathy. The third aspect is really the most important, and it's really the most important. It is the place where I see empathy fall apart most regularly, most reliably. And this third step, so we have emotion contagion, which sounds funny, but it's fun. We have empathic accuracy, so you know what's happening in this level. You can identify it and know where to go next. The third aspect is emotion regulation. This is not just your capacity to regulate your own emotion, but regulate the emotion that is in the room. Regulate the emotion that is occurring in the other person or is occurring in the situation. My first book, The Language of Emotions, is all about emotion regulation and empathic accuracy. It is about learning to ground and focus yourself. It is about learning to set good boundaries. It is about learning how to soothe and resource and rejuvenate yourself. It's learning how to communicate with yourself and work with ideas that don't work anymore. So if you got really terrible emotion training, it's about sort of telling your whole psyche, we're letting that go and we're learning some new things now. We're going to learn a new way to do it. In the art of empathy, what I'm looking at is how does that emotion regulation translate into your capacity to be present for another person? Perhaps the person is having anxiety, and that can be difficult to be around. Or the person is crying uncontrollably, and you don't know what to do. Or the person is enraged, and you might be a little afraid. So how do you regulate your own emotions? One is to ground yourself, right? Just stabilize yourself. Another is really important, is to know what the emotion is for, to know why the emotion is there. And I talked about that in my previous series of videos on the emotions that are here on YouTube. But for instance, sadness is about letting go of something that doesn't work anyway. So if someone's crying, sort of, sobbing intensely, that person's letting go of a lot. So what you can do is just be present, right? Just be present and be like, it's okay to cry. You don't have to say that, but just have that feeling. It's okay to cry. If the person's totally enraged, anger is about setting boundaries. So if a person's taken over with rage, what they're telling you is they don't have boundaries, and their anger is trying to come up and build some. So what you want to do is make sure that you set your boundaries well, and you don't do any kind of poking, right? You shouldn't be so angry, right? Which, if a person has no boundaries, you might as well just slap them. So it's about understanding why the emotion is there. If someone is feeling anxiety, you may remember from the anxiety video that anxiety is an emotion that looks forward to the future, asks you to stop procrastinating if you are, and to get on this future task, right? Organize it, get ready. Anxiety is something that you may feel, that actors may feel when they go on stage. It's called stage fright. But what this, increase in adrenaline and increase in focus and this kind of laser focus is doing is preparing them for any eventuality, right? And so anxiety has a purpose. It might not be comfortable, but sometimes you're not comfortable, and there's a reason for it. So your capacity to regulate emotions is important. So if you're in the room with anxiety and anxiety is about preparing for the future, don't disturb the person, but is there anything that I can do to help calm things down? Not to take the anxiety away, but so that I can support the person's anxiety in preparing for them for the future. And I can say, okay, is there anything that I can do or any kind of planning that I can help you do? And if they say, no, it's too much, you say, okay, fine. But you don't have to get into the emotion with them and then fall apart, right? So a part of something that happens when people's empathy falls apart is that there's an emotion in the room. They identify it accurately with their empathic accuracy. So the emotion contagion occurred, nice. Empathic accuracy occurred, nice. And the emotion regulation does not occur because they might not have any practice for that emotion. They don't know what to do with grief. They don't know how to work with fear. They don't know what to think about when they're feeling depressed. They don't want to be anywhere near it. So people may have the first two aspects of empathy, locked in, like they're awesome, they get an A+. And when they reach emotion regulation, it all falls apart. It all falls apart. And they can't be empathic, they can't be present, because either that other person's emotion is painful to them and they can't regulate it, or they've decided that that emotion is not okay. That is not an emotion you need to have. And so they're gone. So a huge aspect of your capacity to empathize with others in a skillful and sort of other-focused way, so that you're really present for them, is to have your emotional house in order, so that no matter what emotion comes up, you won't be thrown out of the room by it. You won't be knocked off your feet by it. You'll be able to be present and grounded and focused, to resource yourself, to soothe yourself, and to be able to maintain your presence and your humanity in the face of the intense or the confusing emotion of another. Emotion regulation is sort of the lever or the pivot point upon which the further aspects of empathy can occur. Because if it stops there, empathy stops. You can stop your empathy at any place. Let's say emotion contagion. Too much emotion comes in and you weren't ready for it and you don't have any ability. Boom, empathy stops there. Empathic accuracy. You don't know what emotion just happened or why. Boom, empathy stops there. Emotion regulation. You don't know how to work with that emotion. Empathy stops there, right? So in each of these aspects, there's like a crucial sort of a pivot, but I think emotion regulation is the biggest one. It is the thing that I see most often leading to an unempathic response, or to people over-identifying. Let's say someone's crying and you go fully into your sadness and you begin crying and you pick up the whole sadness from that other person. What that tells me is that you don't have very good boundaries, and that you don't know the difference between yourself and the other. And having you fall apart is not really an empathic experience for the other person. Now they have to feel sort of ashamed that they're crying because you're falling apart, right? So emotion regulation will help you whether you have not, if you feel like you don't have enough empathy. It could be that you just can't get up to emotion regulation because you have had poor training, like most of us have, about emotions. Or it can be that you have too much empathy and you're pulling in so much emotion contagion, but you are not regulating it. So you get overwhelmed, and this is what can lead to empathic burnout and really empathy fatigue. Is there's a lot coming in and you don't have skills for it. You don't have practices for it. So all of the work in the language of emotions is about giving you practices and skills for every emotion that you have. And then the art of empathy kind of returns to the emotions and then sort of looks at, so how do you work with this emotion in another person? Emotion regulation is a key, and it's something that you can do simply. Just learn to breathe in, ground yourself, focus on your own emotions. What emotions am I feeling? I don't know. But that person's feeling sadness. It's being able to make that separation so that you can regulate the emotion. And know that your job as an empathic person is not to suck the other person's emotions up into your body and then do something with it. It is to make a space or an atmosphere in which that person can have that emotion and receive the gifts and the intelligence and the skills that that emotion brings. So that you're not getting in the way of the emotion. You're not taking over the emotion. You're not falling apart with the emotion. But you are standing as a friend, as a fellow human being, and as someone who is a friend to emotions and empathy. Emotion regulation is wonderful. Once you have emotion regulation, you'll never go back. I'll see you next week. Thank you.